We're here with Anna, the archaeologist. I'm very excited. This is gonna be great. Yeah, I'll answer this question right before we get started. What sparked my love of Egyptology? And you know what? I'm gonna ask Anna what sparked her love of Caribbean archaeology just to get us started. So, my whole thing, it starts with Mummies in the Morning, which is a book that I have up there, Magic Treehouse. I'm also
Yes.
I'm gonna turn on my
Such a good
lights.
book.
Turn on. There we
Oh
go.
my gosh.
Fade. There we go. Looks too dark back there. But Mummies in the Morning, I read, I think, probably, we're going to say first grade. It might have been first grade. I was reading pretty early. And it came with a companion book that Mary Pope Osborne also wrote. That was just like the basics of Egyptology. Ironically, I don't have that book. I have the Mummies in the Morning book, but I don't actually have the like intro book. But it just, ever since then, it just really, I really connected with it. I really thought it was just amazing to have a culture that is just so different from anything that I had learned. And then like little things like the Prince of Egypt movie, like other things just kept holding it. And then to be honest, it's very interesting. Like I won't say the love went away, but like there was a definite slump like in high school where I was just like I was full creative writing. I wanted to be a writer and well I still want to be a writer, but like I was full kind of in that mode until I kind of realized that like oh, you can kind of be like Egyptology is a job, barely, but it is. Like you can go through your career and do this. And so then I got back in with archaeology and then I was like let's go and focus it even more. Um but Anna, what got you into Caribbean archaeology?
So it's not as like fun as yours. I mean, it is, but it
No,
isn't.
it
So
everything can be fun.
I had always wanted to be an archaeologist since I was really, really young. And I didn't, it kind of was the same thing where I didn't really know that it was actually possible to do this. So I ended up getting my undergraduate degree in history actually at the University of North Georgia. And I met an archaeologist there, Dr. Bill Valco, who's amazing, and I love him. Um, who, he showed me that it was possible to do archaeology professionally, and that it wasn't like it was possible. So, um, I took several classes with him in undergrad to complete my anthropology minor, and then ended up he helped me get into my current program, which is Northern Illinois University. So my first year of my master's, which was a year ago, or now, yeah, something like that. I was like, shit. Sorry, am I
Go
allowed to
for it.
swear? Okay. I was like, shoot, I don't know, like where I want to go. What I was interested in was like contact. I was interested in how um, cultures, like indigenous cultures in the Americas, were able to maintain their cultural ties despite experiencing extreme influence from the Europeans. And that's
Love
even
that.
without sugarcoating into extreme genocide,
Yeah.
So um, I thought I wanted to do the Powhatan, and then I
Oh,
realized, really interesting. It's already been done.
I was gonna
Uh,
say.
I
Yeah.
want, you want to do something that adds to the field. So I was like, where else can I look? So I looked and I found something about the Caribbean. I was like, I never thought about the Caribbean, or the Caribbean. I always say it wrong. It's
I
Caribbean.
was literally that was going to be one of my questions because I've been
Mhm.
saying it certain way and then every time I say it, I question myself and I'm like, should I say it the
Oh
other
yeah,
way or is that just a dialect thing?
so the way that they say it for the movie, The Pirates of the Caribbean, is correct.
Okay.
Carib is the name of an indigenous group that
Gotcha.
are now we now call them Kalinago.
Mm.
Carib means cannibal.
Oh,
Um, so there's
great.
the Taino, which I'm not going to get into too much, but Taíno literally means good in their language, in the Taíno language, and Carib means cannibal, essentially bad,
Yeah.
and that's what they were called. And so it's literally called the Cannibal Sea. So the Caribbean Sea is the Cannibal
I
Sea.
cannot believe I've never known that until now.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
So I was looking around. I found out that yeah, it's Caribbean. So I saw this guy, Ken Wild, who you'll see a picture of later. He was a park archaeologist in the Virgin Islands, and he'd been doing stuff for a really long time. So I sent him an email asking about like, hey, do you think you could help me with like a direction. I was looking at pottery at the time, and he's a ceramicist. So I was chatting with, or sorry, I sent him an email. He never got back to me.
Of course.
And I was chatting with his colleague. So he was the one who actually told me to get in contact with him. And he emailed me one day and he was like, "Hey, Ken said he saw your email. He's just really busy right now." I was like, "Okay."
Okay.
So then I emailed him in September of 2021. I got a random email from him in December 2021.
Mm.
Hey, and I give me a call with his phone number. I call him. He's like, "Hey, you want an internship in the Virgin Islands?" I said no, and then I was like, "Shoot, that was not a good choice." And so I immediately called my advisor, Dana Bardolph, who is lovely. I love her. And I said, "I'm freaking out. I just got offered an internship with the National Park Service." She's like, "Oh,
This
I don't
doesn't
know.
happen. What island in the Virgin Islands was this on?
St. John,
Okay.
small.
Because I was gonna, the only experience, ironically, even though I know nothing about Caribbean archaeology, it is actually one of the places that I did excavate.
Yes, I
Um,
know. Yeah, you
but
told me
I
about
was
the St.
in St. Croix.
State Little Princess.
Yeah, Estate Little
Yeah.
Princess, exactly. And one of the I was there for 2 weeks. The first week, and granted, I didn't actually touch dirt at all. I somehow got in charge of making sure all of the kids camp cleans stuff correctly. So I was supposed to be the person to teach them how to dirt, and it literally the plans just went awry.
Oh my God.
But one of the things that we did was we went to go talk to this guy, and I wish I knew his name, but down in now I need to remember which of the two big cities in St. Croix it was.
Shinstead?
I think it was at a fort, so now I can't remember.
Fredericksted?
Yeah, I think it was Fredericksted, and there's a fort there, and it's owned I think by either the National Park Service or the Conservancy, but I can't
Mm-hmm.
remember which one. I have a
Yeah.
feeling it's National Park Service, and they were doing an excavation there. There's a little tiny excavation,
Yeah.
and then there is a guy there who the only memory of what he looked like in my head is just picture the old white guy from Jurassic Park with like the white beard. Like that's in my head, that's all I remember how he looked because I didn't know who
Oh,
this was. I didn't know who I was talking to. I just went with my boss to go talk to him, and he all I remember though is he just had the most beautiful view of the ocean outside of his office in the fort. Like it was like this outdoor walkway and you went up and he had this most beautiful view. But he was apparently, I think, he was the head archaeologist of whatever group that was
yeah.
there. And so now I'm like, is this the same person or is this somewhere related? It probably is.
Oh, yeah. Ken has only worked on St.
St. John.
John, St. Thomas, and like he has. I don't think he's been to St. Croix. I don't think he's excavated there, so
Yeah.
he has no jurisdiction there, from my
I'll have to figure
understanding.
out
So
who
that's
that
probably
is.
just a person. I'm sure I was told that guy's name at some
Yeah.
point, but I don't
Believe me,
remember.
I was introduced to this man and I remember nothing.
So funny. But yeah. So I, freaked out, called my advisor, and I was like, yeah. See, you're seeing now what I mean by my inability to tell a story short.
That's fine.
Okay. So,
Hi,
is it
exciting.
possible to turn me up a bit? So I guess my volume is a little low. I can also
I know,
speak up.
Alexandra. I'm so sorry. I think this is as high as she can
Okay.
go.
Okay, I'll just speak a little louder. That's not a problem.
Oh,
So
my goodness.
I called my advisor and I'm like, I just got offered a internship with the National Park Service. I'm freaking out. She goes, well, I'm on my way to an eye appointment. Let me call you back. I was like, okay. I was like, shoot. So I ended up talking with her, and she's go for it. She's like, go for it. And I was like, oh my God, okay. So I call him back. I texted him. I said, hey, Ken, I actually really do want to think about this. I'm going to give you a call in a little bit after I talk to my advisor. I called him back. I said, I'll take the internship if you're being serious. And he's like, yeah, I'm absolutely serious. And that's kind of it's history. I ended up going to the Caribbean, and I really loved it there. And the site that I'm going to talk about mainly today is actually the site. I actually lived there,
Oh,
like less than not even a tenth of a mile
that's really
technically
cool.
from the site. It hasn't been open in like 7 years, but I was right next to it
I was
the
gonna
entire
say,
time I
like,
was there.
we were in a little condo unit that was pretty much just down the road from Estate Little Princess, and that
Yeah.
hadn't been open since before the hurricane.
Oh
And
no.
when I was there, that was 2018, so
Oh,
I
absolutely.
doubt it's been
Yeah.
open since then.
Well, okay, I guess we'll get started. Yay. Okay, so
Yay.
My name's Anna. You've heard a lot about me, hopefully, so far, if you've been in here the whole time. Um, I am a student. I'm getting my master's right now. So what I'm going to talk about today is actually my master's thesis research. So I just have to write a really big paper, essentially on Paleoethnobotanical analysis of classic Taíno sites on St. John, U.S. Virgin Islands. So first and foremost, we can go to the next slide. We're going to start with breaking down that big word in my title. So click that slide. Paleo means old or ancient, and then we have ethno, meaning people or culture, and then botany, the scientific study of plants. So when you put it together, you have paleo.
I went backward.
No, you're fine. So it's the study of ancient plant use. So hopefully my title makes a little bit more sense, that I'm going to be doing a botanical analysis of ritual sites. So you can move on. So let's set the stage. So we are talking about the Caribbean. The Caribbean is made up of over 700 islands separated into 30 different territories. So any archaeology that occurs in the Caribbean is Caribbean archaeology. It's really just a regional focus. So whether it is archaeology of ancient Caribbean people, which is who I study, or the archaeology of European plantations, which actually Melissa has done. And that can tell us about the lives of plantation owners and of the enslaved people. If it is in the Caribbean, it is Caribbean archaeology. I personally studied the Taíno, and they are an indigenous Caribbean group that was present from about 1200 to 1500 CE. And many people who live in the Caribbean today descend from the Taíno. And they lived on the islands of Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. So now, where did they come from? Like, how did they get to the Caribbean? Probably a question people might want to know. So there were two major migrations into the Caribbean. First, if you'll click the slide, we had a migration from Central America around 6,000 years ago, so about 4,000 BCE, to Cuba. And they sailed there, from about somewhere in Central America. And we can see this in some of their material remains, how they mirror some of the stuff that we found in Central America. The other group, the second migration, thank you, they sailed in canoes around 2,500 years ago from the Orinoco River Valley, which is the bottom of that arrow, in Venezuela, to Puerto Rico. And we believe that this second migratory group are the ancestors of the Taíno. And canoe, fun fact, is actually a Taíno word. There's a lot of words that you may not realize that we use that are actually are from the Taíno language. So it was canoa. People don't know that. We still use a lot of words.
Did not know that.
It's also a Taíno word. So the Taíno are so important because they were the first indigenous American group to come in contact with Europeans and be subjected to genocide in the Americas. This genocide, unfortunately, has led to so many gaps in our understanding of the practices of the Taíno. Even though many people, as I said, descend from the Taíno in the Caribbean, they have been so far removed from their ancestral culture due to the forced assimilation by Europeans. But hopefully, by me doing this botanical analysis, we can do some reconstruction of the island ecology, like the environment. That way we can maybe see what the environment may have been like when the Taíno inhabited the islands, and we may be able to better understand their traditional plant uses that might still be present in their descendants, with their descendants today. Moving on. So next up, we're literally gonna go from big picture and just slowly go down. So it's literally gonna be like an upside down triangle. So now we're at St. John. So this is the island that I lived on, and there will be an arrow in a moment that will kind of show you. So if you'll click the slide, so I'll be analyzing soil from the Cinnamon Bay site, which is where that is pointing. And if you look, there's a little tent looking thing next to that small 20 in the circle. I lived there. That is actually exactly where I lived for 4 months this time last year. It's been a whole year since I've been there. And I lived in a tent the entire time, and I loved
Oh my God.
it. But I'll be analyzing soil.
So commendable. Yeah. So commendable, man.
So I'll be analyzing the soil samples that were taken from Cinnamon Bay. Cinnamon Bay is a ritual site that was continuously visited from approximately 1000 CE to 1490 CE. So right before Columbus and other Europeans arrived, they were there. So they left like right before. I think when Columbus and his group sailed past St. John, they could only see a single person when they were sailing by, which is, I imagine that when they were sailing, people were probably in shock because they were very large vessels that they were sailing.
Yeah.
So to only have one person shows that there really wasn't that many people left on St. John. The site at Cinnamon, when it was used ritually, was not lived at. So there's no occupation at Cinnamon that overlaps with the ritual part of the site. And the samples that I'm studying from Cinnamon were collected over 20 years ago and have been in a repository or storage since shortly after they were excavated. And then next arrow, we have, I just totally scrolled. I have notes that I'm reading. Yes, it probably is. So we have Trunk Bay. Trunk is obviously just one bay west of Cinnamon. I did get to go there a couple times. It's a beautiful place. Trunk, so I'll often refer to them as Cinnamon and Trunk. It's just easier for me. So if that's what you hear, I'm still referring to the same thing. So Trunk was a habitation site located obviously one bay west, and has a occupation that was radiocarbon dated to 800 to 1200 CE. So we have Cinnamon that was 1000 to 1490, and we have Trunk that was 800 to 1200. So there is an overlap there by about 200 years. And I did mention earlier that the Taíno were present 1200 to 1500. And so these groups that are before them are the pre-Taíno. So there are multiple different pre-Taíno groups. I'm not going to get into that because there are so many. There's like 9 or something. Like,
oh gosh,
too many to get into, and I don't want to confuse everyone. So we'll just use pre-Taíno, but know that I may be referring to multiple different groups who kind of evolved into the Taíno culture. So then we also have, moving on, we have the
no, I got it.
Oh, there it is. Okay. And if you'll do one more click to get the arrow to pop up on the next map.
There we go.
I'm so sorry, I have so many maps, but I really
no, maps are good. I love maps.
Everything. So that is the Tutu Park Mall is what you're seeing, but it was the Tutu Park.
Sorry guys, that's gonna be so loud. One second. Thank you so much, Sacred Caramel, for the follow. I totally forgot the alerts are gonna be so loud. I will try to catch them. I'll try to catch them. I see them.
Yeah,
this is exactly what. This is exactly. It's just blaring Indiana Jones music. It just almost blew out my ears. Okay.
Oh my god. Perfect.
Continue. Thank you, Sacred Caramel, for following.
As I mentioned, this is the Tutu Park Mall, but it was originally the Tutu Archaeological Village site before jump scare. Before the site was going to be developed on, they didn't know it was a site. So as they started pulling things up, they were like, what, And so thank God the private developers, because if it's private, they don't have to do any kind of mitigation, but they were cool and they decided to let some archaeology happen. And so they had 4 months, which was actually, I think, 2 months longer than they were supposed to have. 4 months to gather as much data as possible from the Tutu site, which is excellent because
that's insane. Honestly, I
know.
Giving 4 months. I mean, even 1 month is usually pretty impressive for a private archaeology.
I apologize. There's a lot of sirens in the background, so we'll wait until that passes. I'm right next to a very main road where I am currently. Is that loud or what? I don't know if you can hear it or not.
I can hear it.
Yeah. So, Tutu is now a mall. It is completely a parking lot and a Kmart.
That's crazy.
The highest grossing Kmart in the world, by the way.
What?
I'm not joking. On St. Thomas, it is the highest grossing Kmart in the world. But yeah, so Tutu had two major occupations. There is question whether or not there was an issue with the radiocarbon dates, but from what we know, the first major occupation was from 65 to 950 CE, and then the second one was from 1150 to 1500 CE. So there's literally only a 100-year gap. So we're wondering if maybe there was some issue with the radiocarbon dates, but that's okay. It happens. But the reason I'm showing these sites other than cinnamon is because I will be using these two sites because they actually already have botanical data that's been collected from them. Cinnamon is special in that it didn't have an occupation during this ritual time period. Its ritual period, I should say. Whereas trunk and tutu, trunk did not have any kind of ritual context. And jury's out for me right now whether or not tutu had a ritual context, but they were both occupation sites. So I'll be using the data from those sites to compare to cinnamon. And I'll show you guys a chart later with some of the plants that were found at those sites. Moving on. So, another map. So, now that I've really shown you the big picture, we're again getting a bit smaller. So now we're going to focus on cinnamon. So Cinnamon Bay St. John was, I think, first occupied by Europeans probably around like the late 1500s to the early 1600s, and they built a road. What you see is that like yellow line, that is a historic road that was built sometime around 1600, and it actually covered the site. So that black box that you see the arrow pointing to is actually what site I'm studying. That is the Cinnamon Bay site, and it was so perfectly intact. If you'll go on to the next slide, they found an articulated turtle plastron. So that means that it was still intact together. Wow. And this is huge because you don't find this type of thing unless the site is fairly well preserved. So they found this turtle plastron, which again is remarkable because it's mostly cartilage, and that does not typically preserve. So they knew the site would most likely be very intact because this was only 20 centimeters below surface. And so they were like, wow, like everything below this has to be perfectly preserved because you don't get cartilage preserving. You know, it's not bone, it's cartilage. So the first full-scale excavation of cinnamon was in 1992. It had been previously discovered, I believe, in the 60s by this guy, actually maybe in the 30s, by Goodman Hut, I believe his name was, a Dutchman, I believe. Danish probably, actually, because that's who owned the Virgin Islands for quite a while. Hi, Ash.
Welcome, Ash.
Again later. Real quick, I'll just say it's the study of ancient plants used by people. It is, yes.
Plants, ancient plants.
So the first full-scale excavation at Cinnamon was in 1992, and the reason they excavated was because Hurricane Hugo in 1999 absolutely upped the erosion significantly. And erosion is such a problem with our coastal sites, and it's quite devastating actually. So after Hurricane Hugo, the beach at Cinnamon was washing away, and so they were like, we need to fix something. We need to do something, because they were watching as the Cinnamon Bay site was washing out. Like, they knew it was there because of those previous people finding it, but they didn't know the scale of which it was, like how big it was. And so they chose to do excavation so that they could try and preserve as much information as possible. So moving on, really quick, since I talked about kind of like, you know, I was saying like, oh, it's gonna be perfect underneath. So imagine
stratigraphy.
So that's just this idea that like as you go down a certain amount, like it's not typically a set amount. You're going down in time, into the past. And so like, let's say that obviously this does not represent Cinnamon Bay at all.
Yeah.
This is literally, it says London, hopefully.
This is London.
Yeah, so this is just an example. So like, let's just say they found that turtle plastron in the early modern section. Everything underneath that was perfectly intact.
Perfect.
Beautiful. And so, yeah, so that was really awesome. And moving on, this is a picture of the archaeologist Ken Wild, who was actually my boss when I worked on St. John for 4 months last year. He is the one who excavated cinnamon in 1992, 1999, and 2016. He's done a lot there, and it's kind of his baby. But he is obviously in this picture here, and this is from the excavation, I believe in 1992, possibly 99. I don't know. It's an old photo because I can tell.
It could be either. It could be either.
His hair is not as gray. I love
This is
that.
100% a 90s photo. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. So you can tell from this photo that's pottery kind of in the bottom, like left side. Oh yeah, that, and then that big piece
this piece.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of shells. Oh
I'm
my
seeing
gosh,
the conch shells up here.
Oh yeah. And so
some
some of those were probably uneaten. And that's because they were offerings to their gods. Like they were like, here's food. Like this is for you, not for us. Like obvious distinction. Like when you don't have a shell with a drilled hole in it, you know it hasn't really been eaten. Or bivalves, like oysters. Like if they're not opened, that means they're uneaten. So that's how we know a lot of this, they were definitely offerings, is they weren't eating it. Who throws away uneaten food, right?
Yeah.
The reason.
The Egyptians all the time.
Oh no.
Well, granted, the Egyptians, similar to this, is that they would leave the offerings there, and but essentially the offerings would be the food for the priests who took care of the temples or tombs. So they might have to wait a day, like essentially, but the priests would go by and then take all the food, and then that would be their payment, because this was no money. This was a barter society. They never had any money until the Greeks came in. So like everything was barter. So priests would get paid with the food that people left for offerings for the tombs that they were like looking after.
That's interesting.
But it was probably a little stale. Like I don't doubt, like I feel like they had to leave it for like at least a day or maybe 2 days for like the essence to be like absorbed by the deceased. But like it's just like this, like exactly, if the Egyptians had like any sort of like clams or anything like that, they 100% would have the same thing. They'd have like it wouldn't be open. They wouldn't have gone through the bother of doing it.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy. But
just love the shells. So, the shells are so cool.
You can tell from this picture just how many artifacts were present, and those shells are considered artifacts, or ecofacts is what we would call them. But because of how dense the site was, how many artifacts there were, it took him 2 years to complete a single unit because of how many artifacts that were recovered. So it took a really long time, and cinnamon is special in that way, that it was so intact because of that Dutch road that was put over it in the 60s.
That is insane, considering what I know about other prehistoric sites where like, I mean, one of my professors when I was in England, he's kind of famous for finding this quarry site in England. And he told us that like some of the sites he works at, for the whole like 8 weeks, they'd come away with 50 artifacts. And I'm like, 50?
Wow.
50? And I'm like, you could not pay me. Like I'm an artifact baby. Like I need to find the piece, like the things. Like I would not want to do that because it just wouldn't catch my interest as much. And so that's amazing for a site that would be considered prehistoric in a lot of other time periods to have that many artifacts.
Absolutely. And the reason why it is so well preserved is there are so many factors that can like destroy a site. People, animals, and weather, and maybe even fewer, and erosion, which is weather,
but
it's really, really awesome. And so I'm really excited. I don't think I've said this yet because I haven't gotten to the we can actually go to the next slide. That's perfect.
You're very right, Ash. Volcanic eruption, things that will, like, I mean, that's the sense, like, in this weird way, we're actually very thankful for the colonizers to build a road there because it did fully preserve it. And like, I know of a site that's like, it's like an Old West site. It's this Old West saloon. And this saloon got almost perfectly preserved because they moved out of the saloon and then the entire thing burnt down like 2 months later. So archaeologically, they just went down, found the ash layer, and then everything that was left in the saloon when it burnt down is just all underneath there. And it was an apparently an insane site. So you're totally right. Like like natural disasters and things like that sometimes preserve things very, very well, even in
Yeah.
that destructive state. But you're
Mhm.
right, absolutely.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. That's really awesome. I have to look at slinks at it. But
Oh yeah, I think I'm gonna do
so
a presentation of it soon because I did it for one of my classes. It's actually it's an African American owned saloon
oh
in a place
yeah,
called Nevada City, but it's not in
okay,
Nevada. I can't
that's
remember, but
cool.
I have a whole presentation of it. I'm like, you know what? Maybe we'll present this because I just have it, and we might as well
Okay.
show people.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. But I don't know if it's been clear. I realized I should have maybe said this at the beginning. This is all preliminary. Like I
Yeah.
have done so much research on cinnamon. I haven't got soil samples yet. I'm
Ah.
currently waiting on them. They should be on their way. They should be on a boat or a plane right now, on their way to my university. And I will start doing analysis on them in a month. So I'm really excited. So what I have here in front of you guys is a chart that I made showing
Cool.
many of the plants that were present at Trunk Bay and at the Tutu Archaeological Village site, which were on the maps previously. So what you see here is a variation of edible plants, like Chenopodium is almost like quinoa,
Oh.
guava, which a lot of us are familiar with, maize, aka corn,
Mm-hmm.
passion fruit, and I
Passion
think
fruit.
there's some wild beans on there, and fig and
Mm.
tamarind. Some of the other stuff is they are woody plants, like that I'm kind of interested in. I may not be able to get into the woody plants.
Mm-hmm.
They're a little different than like the plants that are like fruit with their seeds and things. But
Mm-hmm.
I think I put the trees on there because they have medicinal uses, and I was like,
Oh.
well, I'm interested in that as well. So
And
my
for a
hope,
ritual site, that could be
yeah,
tied in as well. Yeah.
sure. And so yeah, so we have all of these plants that were found at these other two sites that overlap significant number of years, like 200
Mm-hmm.
years at least for, Trunk, and then about 500. The whole actual, like pretty much the whole context of Tutu overlaps with
Mm.
cinnamon at one point. So my hope is that I find all of these,
Yeah.
and then some. But I'd be happy with just a few, even just to say like, okay, we can see a compare, like a, they are eating a lot of the same things because they are not a monolith group. Like
Mm-hmm.
different groups on different islands, although we may identify them as the Taíno, probably had different eating habits. So
Yeah.
because they were offering food that they would typically eat, which I don't think I said, but I did
Yeah.
mention that it was uneaten food. They we
You
might
would
learn a
hope
lot.
to find the same things in an occupation site than with a
Right.
ritual site. Yeah.
Yeah. So this project is like so important because there has been very little botanical analysis completed for sites in the Caribbean, specifically ritual sites. And as I mentioned, across the Caribbean, with the amount of erosion, like being able to do
Mm-hmm.
this kind of work is really, really exciting. And moving on.
Oh,
Um,
so pretty. I want to go back
oh
to St.
yes,
Croix so bad because
yeah. So
like
this is
it's
a
just the
view
water.
of the bay in front of Cinnamon.
Wow.
What you actually see, all those buildings on that hill directly like in the middle, that's called Peter Bay. Those are like $1 billion,
Of course
trillion
they are.
dollar houses.
Of course.
But yeah, so again, through this analysis, we learned so much about the Taino who lived at Cinnamon and how they interact with their environment, and hopefully be able to answer some questions that maybe have never been asked before. And I'm really excited to do this. Who knows, maybe in a year when I'm done with all the writing and everything, I might be able to come back and do
Come
a little
back.
sharing. So, but
Absolutely.
that is that on that. If you guys have any questions, you want to move to the next slide. Hopefully it works.
Questions.
Oh, it doesn't work. It's supposed to be a little GIF that's
Oh,
like,
it's a
ask
GIF.
a question.
Oh,
That's all right. Boo.
boo. All right.
Um,
I'm gonna switch to the chatting with just us two.
Perfect.
But thank you. That was so
Yeah.
interesting. How do I get out of this? Okay. Um, I know I had a couple questions, but now I probably have more after this. But in more of a general like Caribbean archaeology.
Mhm.
Wait, I'm trying to find my list. Where did I put them? There they are. Like this is so. How many programs are there in Caribbean archaeology? around the United States, around potentially elsewhere? Like, are you in a specific Caribbean archaeology, or is it
Mhm.
really, because I know this happens when it comes to Egyptology is lucky in that it has
Mhm.
the opportunity to have different there's whole departments of Egyptology,
Yeah.
and I mean we're still sparse, but like we have the, but is this kind of a situation where you go into an archaeology department and then you get to pick whatever you want and just hope maybe there's a professor who has some knowledge about that and kind of
Yeah.
talk about that?
So I got really lucky that Dana Bardolph, my advisor, is very flexible, and she just was kind of like, if something is drawing you, like, or you're drawn to something, like, I'm happy to help you with it. I mean, it's going to be a lot of work if, I don't know like a lot about it, but I'm, happy to do it. And so she was very open to allowing me to kind of find my way. But there are universities that have really great like
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean archaeologists,
Mm-hmm.
specifically in Florida.
Yep.
A state I choose to avoid.
Yes. Well,
But
a
yeah,
state that most of us are trying to avoid.
yeah. And for example, I know that the one that's in Gainesville is at University of Florida, has a gentleman named Dr. Bill Keegan. He is a leading Caribbean archaeologist and has been
Cool.
for many years. And I want to say that the University of Miami, it's a
I
private
actually,
university.
I do know that because I just
Yeah.
posted a TikTok over on my Unearth
Nice.
Archaeology page about
Uh-huh.
the oldest human remains have been found in Puerto Rico.
Yes.
And that was University of Florida in Miami. Yeah,
Yeah.
University of Miami of Florida, not
Yeah.
University of Miami of Ohio.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Yeah.
uh,
Um,
it makes sense. It
yeah.
makes sense that it would be in Florida.
No, but that's a really good question. And there's other programs where there are Caribbean archaeologists dotted across the United States, but specifically Florida is a good place to look. And they have really great comparative collections
Mm-hmm.
at that university. So if you want to do like animal bone analysis or zooarchaeology, or if you want to do Peabot or sorry
Mm-hmm.
paleobotany, we
Peabot, I
call it
love that. That's
yeah,
great.
we call it Peabot. It's easier to say. It's so much easier to say Peabot. Um,
I'm
hello,
Mathis Martel.
Matthias. What is it?
I said
Matho?
Matthias. I don't know. It
Matthias.
might it might be Matthias.
Oh, that's so funny.
Well, welcome.
So I thought you said Matho. I was like, oh, she's going French with it. Um,
I do
so
tend to go French with it.
that's so funny. But yeah, that's a really good question. I think that most professors, neither, but okay.
I tried so hard. Got so far.
Matu? Matu? I don't
I have no
know.
idea. I'm not gonna
I
try again.
Martel. How about that? So, um, yeah, I think that a lot of professors are really willing. I feel like if you are enthusiastic to maybe branch out for you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's every professor, but I know a lot of people who like came in and they were doing something completely outside the realm of what their
Mm.
professor did. But a lot of them are willing because it means that they get to learn. They get
Yeah.
to learn something that they didn't when they were in school. And so it broadens their ability to do research, which is always worthwhile. So
And I think that's great because technically in my undergraduate, when I had to do my senior thesis, the way my school was not an archaeological school. I picked the worst archaeological school that I could possibly do, but I picked it because I liked it. I liked the vibe. It was near
mm-hmm.
where I wanted to be. But we didn't get a real archaeologist until my junior year. Like
Yeah.
we had some professors that were because it was an anthro department, so like they were kind of
Mm-hmm.
archeo. But the way that they had to do in our senior thesis was that it was a course that you took that
Mm-hmm.
essentially it was just like you just sat in with everybody else and you kind of used it as like support time to
Yeah.
like get to write your thesis, but it was only offered every other year. So your
Mm-hmm.
senior thesis was done your junior year some of the time, and it just happened to line up when I was going abroad. And
Yeah.
so I was able to arrange to do a independent study of it my senior year with my professor. But his specialty was very specific, was enslavement on Long Island, like the
Oh,
African diaspora in Long Island, New York. And I was like, I want to do an Egyptology thing. And he's like, you
Yeah.
go for it. And like,
Aw.
he knew nothing. And like, I think he definitely inflated my ego a little bit talking about how cool it was. When, of course, like, I look back at it now, that was the worst paper I've probably ever written. Not in the sense of
Yeah.
like I still support my theories that I had about this, but I had no access to Egyptology books. I had absolute like my our
Mm.
library was huge but did not have anything like that. I
Wow.
did not know what ILL was back in undergraduate, so I couldn't get
Oh yeah.
interlibrary loan books. But like if I
No.
imagine like if I redid it with my Egyptology library that we had in our masters, like oh, I would have been able to blow that
Oh yeah.
thesis away.
Publish that shit. No.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like completely take it
Do
down.
it. I mean,
I'm honestly considering at least doing. Here's the thing: I can't get away from uh, Excel spreadsheets and making corpi. I don't know if you say it plural. I can't get away from it. I just love doing it.
uh-huh.
Um, Not even joking. I'm considering just making the weird pipe dream is I'm trying to see if maybe I could make like an online website where fellow archaeology and art history students can just make corpuses for free
Hmm.
and like
Hmm.
just have a place that they can hold their databases because like I just love
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
um but it's just like I've been I don't want to rewrite it, but I've been considering like going back and trying to find better books to like
Yeah.
find my items and my artifacts and stuff to make stuff like that.
Ooh.
um
Ooh.
but yeah, it's always good to have professors that
Uh,
they have no knowledge in what you're doing,
no.
but are so ready and like willing
Yeah.
to help and figure it out. Like that's always super helpful, and it's helpful especially in the world of archaeology where the majority of the time you're not going to get a professor that is your
Hmm.
exact same uh, topic and stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh.
Um, I guess so. Another one of my questions I had was: are there any huge? Because we talk about this a lot on my page, and I've talked about it with other users.
Hmm.
Like, are there any huge misconceptions about Caribbean archaeology? And whether that is like we're talking crazy ancient aliens theories, or just like some very like the more basic ones, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
Because I know it's obviously I think, at least to me, I would assume it is very, very diverse because,
Hmm.
hey, tons of islands. You would think that it would be very diverse.
Yeah.
Maybe it's not as diverse as I would think it is.
Mhm.
And, like, I don't know. So, any kind of
I
big
don't
misconceptions?
know if there are any misconceptions that I've been made aware of.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a lot of people, of course, like maybe their first thing that they think is maybe that we're doing archaeology of pirates or something.
That was going to be
Like,
another one of my questions. I
and
was like, how much of
I,
my other question, which will be for later, is how much of
yeah,
Caribbean archaeology is pirates? Because I do love pirates, and we can talk about that secondly.
oh yeah,
But yeah, that I can understand that.
yeah. You can follow me. I'm pretty sure you can follow me, even though I am.
She doesn't
I
stream on Twitch, but
my intention is to stream in the future.
I'm gonna
So
convert everybody. This is what happened with
I,
Alexandria. Um, so
yeah,
yeah, I
I
can
feel
actually
like
do it. I
it's
can
been
do
a
a shout
while.
out. Here we go. I got it. I got you. I got you.
Amazing. That's a great statistic. So misconceptions definitely like
Let's see if it works.
I like really want
I just fixed the
I
shout
really
out
want to
thing
think
and it
about
won't
this for a
work.
minute because I think that maybe people okay, here's my biggest issue. Maybe
Yeah.
not misconception, but my biggest problem is that we make it sound like Pocahontas or Matoaka was the first
Mm.
person to ever like meet a European person, and that
Mm.
because she is the first MMIW who was named, but the Taíno are in fact the first MMIWs, and it's really frustrating
What is an
because
MMIW?
missing murdered indigenous women.
Ah,
They're the
good.
first people to experience this horrible genocide, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's so frustrating to me that we don't learn about the Taino at all in
Mm-hmm.
school, and they are like we're so obsessed with Columbus and missing murdered indigenous women, which it's good to look into.
I feel like
Just
is that has that kind of more been coined by I find I hear about it more in Canadian
Mhm.
Indigenous women.
Yeah.
I find that, and I
Yes,
know that obviously, I guess I always associated that with more modern
yeah.
stories of missing, murdered,
Yeah,
and Indigenous women. But
it
I
has
guess it.
been adopted more in the United States because what's
Mhm.
happening, really quick side note, is
Yeah.
that when we have these huge pipeline projects like Enbridge, there are tons of indigenous women because these pipelines are going through their indigenous ancestral and the lands that they live on, like their reservations, and they go missing, they are
Mm.
murdered, they are essayed, and
Yeah.
so it's a huge thing, but it's been a thing forever. We just didn't have really a name for it until more
Hmm.
recently. And so that's my biggest frustration about like that. It's not the misconception, so is the lack of knowledge. No
I,
one knows about the Taíno. No one knows about where did Columbus land? Does anyone
I was
actually know?
actually I was actually going to ask that question because you
Does
said they
anyone want
went
to take a guess without Googling where Columbus landed first?
because you said they went by St. John,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't think it was Puerto Rico.
Mm-mm.
It wasn't it called later Hispaniola?
So
Um,
Hispaniola is the Dominican Republic in Haiti, but it wasn't
that
there.
that island.
Mm-hmm.
That's is that still
It
called
wasn't there.
Hispaniola?
We still call it Hispaniola,
Okay.
yes, when we are
Um,
referring to the whole
yeah.
thing. So not Puerto Rico, not Hispaniola, smaller. You can see.
See, then I go, and then when I think of islands, I did a long time ago. I've talked about this where I went and got obsessed with Sporkle, the quiz website. And there's a name every single country in the world. And when I worked as a secretary for a catering company, and I just sat at a desk all day, I did it all the time until I was able
Yeah.
to do it in the 20 minutes. So I do know like a lot of the islands, but I also
Oh, yeah.
but the problem I had was I don't know exactly where they are,
Where they are.
like in the curve, because I don't think it was down in that curve. I think it was up in the top portion,
It was.
but I don't think it's Cuba. It's got to be if it's a smaller one. And then the only thing that's popping in my head is St. Kitts and Nevis, and I don't think it's St. Kitts and Nevis.
So it was Guanahani,
Guanahani.
aka San Salvador in the Bahamas.
Oh, in the Bahamas. Why didn't I think the
The
Bahamas? I'm stupid.
They
That one I should have
literally,
known.
no, you're good. No, no, no. Don't be embarrassed because people probably think like, oh, Bahamas vacation. Like they don't think, oh, that's where
Yeah.
Columbus landed when he arrived. That is where Columbus landed. He had dinner on his ship with an indigenous leader. With
Mm-hmm.
they're called the Lucien, but we also do associate them with being Taino. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if it's like they're Taino and Lucien. Like
Yeah. And is
that's not
Taíno
something.
a word that they use themselves, or is this an archaeologist given term? Because I know this happens, and I know
Not
some groups don't have a name for themselves, and it's
yes.
been lost. Like I know this happens.
And
So
that is why, so that's one of the things that's hard is that this was a name. So essentially, imagine you are a European person, you're arriving on islands, and you have these people coming up to you and they're gesturing to themselves
I
saying,
mean,
Taino, Taino, I'm good. I'm good. So they were
gotcha,
referred to Taino because that's what they were referring to themselves, but in the sense that they were good. And so that is
gotcha.
where the name comes from. We associate it with them calling themselves that, but probably not really their name. Like
Yeah.
maybe that is what they like, but maybe they didn't even have a name for themselves. They were
I
just
mean, that is. I feel like that's just entirely possible. Like I'm sure.
yeah.
I mean, technically, when you look at Egypt, we use the word Kemet
Okay.
for what they called themselves, but Kemet
Mm-hmm.
itself means the Black Land. It is not used for the word people. It's used
Yeah.
for the land, and of course, what comes with a lot of confusion is that the Black Land meaning the fertile land. The color black
Oh, interesting.
was associated with
And
fertility
fertile.
and
Uh,
rebirth, and that's why Osiris is sometimes completely black because he's the god of
interesting.
yeah. And so it's all about like fertility and rebirth and stuff, but it's called literally the Black Land. And then the
Okay.
other side of the river is the Red Land, which is the
Mm-hmm.
desert, which is the place of the dead and everything. And
Oh,
that's
okay.
but it's like we say that the Egyptians called themselves Kemet because I think we do have words where they'll write the word and then they'll put a person
People?
determinative after,
Okay.
so then it means a person. But they also just have a word for people, which is a different
Okay.
word. So like it's
Weird.
unless you in Egyptians we have a lot of writing about it, but it's also like the
Really?
big like it's all the rich and famous like are the people writing. So
Yeah.
it's you're like would a normal Egyptian say, "Oh yeah, I'm a Kemet." I don't
Yeah.
think so. Like
My
it's
God.
it's this big like I very much like people know this about me is I will say probably supposedly maybe I never try to work in definites because like
Yeah.
both anxiety and also just like the typical archaeologist thought where you're looking at something and you're like what if we're all wrong.
Right? Oh my
it's like
God.
it's like
It's imposter
I
syndrome.
pick up
Like,
this bottle and I'm like this is a drinking vessel. What if I'm wrong? What if we're completely wrong? It's like you think
that's so
because there are
true.
obviously the super obvious objects that you think are, and then you find the
Yeah.
ones that are in that ambiguous era, and you're like, maybe I'm wrong about
Oh,
everything.
messed up. Yeah. Oh my God, that's so funny. Very true. Yeah. Oh, sorry, my phone just went off. But
So back to the pirates.
I knew you were gonna go there next. I was ready.
I know.
Okay, so
And I guess
we
this
took
is and a more academic thing is
no.
people who study piracy and stuff
Hmm.
like do they typically kind of connect themselves with Caribbean archaeology, or is it? I know obviously pirates can be on land or undersea,
Yeah.
so I'm sure you could also say an underwater archaeologist who works lots of
Yeah.
different places would also. And obviously, pirates went up and down the coast of
Uh-huh.
all America, and like there's
Oh
tons of
yeah.
shipwrecks off of North Carolina and Florida and stuff. So like, I was curious if there are groups of people who only study pirates in a more archaeological sense than a
Oh
history
yeah.
sense, and if they are kind of Caribbean archaeologists and
Yeah.
like things like that. We just
So it's hard for me to say,
mhm.
because like I feel like when you're okay, so I'll just go off of my Ken Wild, the
Yeah.
fantastic archaeologist I worked with on St. John, who's been in the Caribbean for oh my God, almost 40 years, maybe
Wow.
something like that. So,
Where men grow beards, that's a really bad joke, but I am
oh
laughing on the inside.
so
An
funny.
archaeologist.
So good. So, he has dabbled in all kinds of archaeology that is present in the Caribbean. So
Mhm.
he's done pirate,
Yeah.
um, pirate archaeology. He has done plantation archaeology,
Plantation
and he
archaeology.
has done indigenous archaeology. I really do think that those are probably the three main things that
Yeah.
you're gonna find. And I don't know if I can separate them necessarily by like, oh, like 30% is this kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
archaeology. And, I think, again, it depends, like you said, if this is a person, because here's the thing we don't have a lot of underwater archaeologists. It's a pretty
Mm.
small community, from my understanding. And
Yeah.
so I imagine that there might be a few who do focus in maritime archaeology in the Caribbean, but there's got probably more who are going to just like go wherever they can get
Mm.
onto a site, right?
Yeah.
Because
That's very true.
it's a very expensive path, like maritime archaeology, and it's
Yeah.
dangerous,
Hmm.
far more dangerous, I think, than terrestrial or just like on land archaeology.
Yeah.
I actually scuba certified when I
Mm.
was in the Caribbean, and I can say that it's very fun. But also, for example, in terms of scuba being dangerous, a little sad moment, but the Wisconsin state archaeologist actually passed suddenly.
Oh
He
wow.
died scuba diving in Lake Mendota, I believe, in Wisconsin. He didn't have a buddy.
Oh.
First rule
First
when
rule is
you
to always have a buddy, man.
always have a buddy, and
Oh my god,
he
that's crazy.
unexpectedly passed. He died while scuba diving, and they didn't find him until maybe a couple hours later, and he
That's
was
always
completely by
yeah.
himself. And so it was
Oh my god.
preventable. I think he might have had like an emergency underwater, like a
Hmm.
medical emergency. Who knows? But yeah, so it's like archaeology underwater is very dangerous. Things
Hmm.
can go wrong. Um, it's also really hard to actually bring up artifacts.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing. I think I was talking about this with the paleontologist, where I'm just like, underwater archaeology seems so interesting, but when you look at like videos of people, it's like it's almost not archaeology. Like, obviously it is, but like,
Yeah.
I just kept talking about like the fanning motion of like getting sand off of things
I've done that.
instead of like the deep digging where like I'm
Yeah.
sweating, I
You're
can't feel
just
my
like,
back. They're like,
and it's all in like slow motion too.
yeah,
Like the sand is
exactly.
moving in slow
But then
motion
you're
around.
trying to be careful, but then you're also covering up,
Oh,
and it like,
jeez. Yeah.
I almost got scuba certified because I could take a scuba class at school, and I was like, oh, if I took this class, I could get certified, and maybe I could then go. But then my forensic anthropologist teacher was teaching another class, and I was like, I want to take that because I like her a lot, and it was at the same time as the scuba class, which is a
No.
bummer.
Oh, so unfortunate.
But I do kind of have a deep fear of the ocean. So of deep
I
ocean.
did
So
too.
it
I'll be honest. I had quite a fear of the ocean. Got over that real quick when I arrived on St. John. I was told we were doing an underwater survey, and I would be guiding the survey from the surface while they were underwater actually surveying. And so
oh
I was in the water, deep fear.
yeah, I do
Yeah,
have a deep
I was
fear
in
of
the
deep
water
water.
for 3 days straight, 8 hours each day,
Wow.
on the surface, and what we call shorties, diving shorties,
Oh my
and
gosh.
so I was at least really floaty. So I really didn't have to work hard or anything to swim, but
I
yeah,
went
I got over
snorkeling
it.
like the last day I was in St. Croix, we went on a snorkel tour, and it was so cool. We went on the reef outside of there's like this island to the north of St. Croix that is, fun fact, the first national park of America, if I remember correctly.
Oh,
It's like Theodore Roosevelt himself like made it the first national park. It's this
wow.
island, and I can't remember the name of it right now.
Yeah.
But it's just a bare island, and there's a trail that goes up to the top. But we went snorkeling around there, and it was. And I had been snorkeling before. I'd been to the Bahamas. I went snorkeling there, but it
Yeah.
was there were lots of waves, and
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know how to snorkel. I just don't know how to breathe normally in a snorkel, and I freak out.
That's
And so
fair.
I'm like freaking bobbing like crazy, just trying to see
Yeah,
anything.
but
All
if
these
the
people are
waves
doing.
are bad,
It's
like it's
kind of
hard to
bad.
snorkel.
And then of
It's
course
hard to.
everyone's like, take the deep breath and dive down. I'm like, I can't do it, man. I just can't. It's just like,
Mm-hmm.
and then in the Bahamas, I thought I saw a barracuda, and that's what got me out of the water there. I was like, I'm
Oh
getting out of here. I have this
no.
really bad photo of this long fish, and I'm like, that's a barracuda.
Uh,
I'm out. I'm out. No, thank you.
oh gosh.
Um, but yeah, it's like it's so interesting that like God, because I have a very weird fascination with pirates. It's definitely because of Pirates of the Caribbean, but
Mm-hmm.
it also when I was a Girl Scout, we went to Savannah, Georgia, which is the home of the Girl
Yeah.
Scouts, if you don't know. But when we were there, we did lots of other stuff. And there's this restaurant that is an old
The
pirate bar.
pirate house. The pirate
Yeah.
smokehouse.
And it
I
has
went there.
these tunnels that go straight out to the ocean. You can just like
Yes,
look
and
down
it's
in them.
so haunted.
And yeah, we went there, and then we also did this very funny but very stupid like pirate day where essentially we went out to Tybee Island, outside of Savannah, and we had two ladies who dressed up as Mary Bonnie and I can't remember the what's the other one,
And Bonnie.
and,
And Bonnie.
Bonnie
Yeah, I got you.
And Mary something. It's the two female
Sullivan.
pirates that
Is it
yeah.
Sullivan? And Bonnie and
I, I think it's probably
Mary Reed,
yeah,
maybe?
Mary Reed. Yeah.
Mary
So
Reed.
they dressed up as those, and then they essentially said that somebody dressed as Jack Sparrow will be somewhere on the beach, and we had to go find treasure. And he showed up, and this guy was, I mean, I thought it was Johnny Depp. It looked like Johnny Depp. He sounded like Johnny Depp. It
Yeah.
was an amazing
Oh my God.
experience. And so it was really cool, and it was cool to kind of see, because I guess I think you didn't really always think that pirates were like in mainland America, even though they did come kind of up and
Sure.
down the coast and stuff. But yeah, so I on our list of on my list of Assassin's Creed games, Black Flag is very high up on that list because I do really like pirates, and just
That's
kind of the
awesome.
interesting like I think it is. It's like literally like this very odd culture that kind of just
Yes.
sprouted up in this area,
Everyone
and
was
it's
equal, essentially,
yeah,
regardless
and
of who you were.
and it's just
Yeah.
I think it's so interesting to look at it in like the juxtaposition of what was going on at the same time, which was full plantation archaeology, full
Hmm.
plantation stuff um in the Caribbean and elsewhere and stuff, and it's one of those
Yeah.
weird little fascinating things where I'm like, I could have been a pirate historian. I would have loved that.
Oh
That would have
yeah.
been real
Oh my
fun.
God. Oh yeah. Jeez.
Um, came face to face with three barracudas and snorkeling in Barbados. Apparently,
Oh
he
my gosh.
breathed in, swallowed a lot of water. Yeah, I that almost happened to me. I was
Yeah.
absolutely
There you
terrified.
go.
Um, but was that all my? Does anybody have any questions for Anna about Caribbean archaeology, about her site in St. John, about paleobotany, paleo eth, no,
That's it.
botany,
Yeah. I believe.
almost there. Um, but it's just very cool. I mean, it's one of those things that one of the subsections of archaeology that you don't hear about a lot,
Hmm.
which is pretty
Yeah.
cool. I guess that's what I was going to ask you. I did have one thing was when you
Hmm.
eventually get your soil samples from Cinnamon Bay,
Yeah.
how are you going to analyze them? Like what is the process? Because is it this is the funny thing I've told people
Hmm.
also is like I am a very unscientific archaeologist. I don't
Yeah.
do the deep science stuff. Like when it comes to Egyptology, I'm full art history. I
Oh
know
yeah.
very little of the our friend BioArc Mark, he's a bioarchaeologist, so he was telling us all
Hmm.
about like analyzing teeth and all that stuff, and I'm just like, this is all going right over my head because like
Oh
this is just I never was able to like get into like any of the super more sciency portions
yeah.
of archaeology as a social science and stuff.
Okay. So something I didn't get into. Oh yes, I'll answer that question, Alexandria.
I'll save that one for you. There we
Um, one of the things I didn't get into because I didn't want to get too confusing because obviously I'm giving you guys a lot of information all at once. So
go. Mm-hmm.
we have something called macro and micro botanical.
Okay.
I do macro because that is what is available to me because my advisor at my university is a macro botanical analyst. So
Okay. Cool.
micro, it's very small plant remains, like microscopic. Macro is larger. You can see it with your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
but you do still use a microscope to kind of help you enlarge and like the remains so you can identify them. So um one of the things is that we start off by separating all of the remains by
Mm-hmm.
identifying them. So we identify them by looking under this microscope, and then we try to identify their taxa or their species.
Mm-hmm.
We count them and we weigh them, and then we think about, okay, if I find a passion fruit seed, which is highly likely, they have hundreds of seeds inside of
Oh
one
yeah,
passion,
that is true. Yeah.
which I really hope. I hope I found one. But so, um, I can figure out, okay, this is a passion fruit seed. Cool. So this overlaps with the passion fruit that were present at Trump Bay. And
Mm-hmm.
so then we go from there and we start to compare and we figure out what everything is. We identify each of the plants as best as we can. Because what we're mostly getting is carbonized remains, most likely things that have like, preserved really well, that were most likely burned. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so what we're seeing is kind of like partial remains, and so that's what we're looking at, and that's how we'll identify everything. And then once we identify everything as best as we can, that's when we start to really like, okay, why is there more of this than this, and
Mm-hmm.
wow, this is something we didn't find at Trump
Yeah.
or T2. So let's figure out maybe why it was only at Cinnamon. Is it because it's a ritual site and not an
Mm-hmm.
occupation site? That's where we start to go with that.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that answers that
Yeah,
question.
no, that was perfect. So it's
And
mainly like seeds, kind of, and because you're not gonna obviously finding fruits or the leaves or anything. We're really finding just the tiniest bits of pieces that are still left.
yeah, pretty much. And sometimes like carbonized wood, like we will get
Mm.
like pieces of wood, but again, wood is difficult if you
Oh,
are
it's.
not like, and it's not really 100% necessary. Like someone else can do that,
Mm-hmm.
and they can study that. So this is opening the door for maybe another Peabot or a paleoethnobotanical now analyst to
Yeah,
come in and maybe decide if they want to look at the wood that was present at Cinnamon, where I'm looking at the food remains. Which, to answer Alexandria's
yeah,
questions, So she said, you may have mentioned this, but does paleoethnobotany also look into how people interacted with plants and the means of food? So yes, I did mention that, but again, I think I kind of brushed over it where I was talking about how the food or what was left at cinnamon was unopened food. So we have
Yeah.
bivalves or like oysters, clams that are not open like this where they could have plucked the food out or the
Mhm.
meat. It was they were still closed. So that's how we know they were offering food. So this food does often overlap, and we have evidence of this because although the Taíno unfortunately were subjected to genocide,
Mhm.
they were observed by Europeans, multiple, and they wrote about them. And so we know for a fact, with a shadow of a doubt, just
Yeah.
because we can't always 100% go with what the Europeans said,
No.
that they were offering their own food that they would
Mhm.
typically eat to their ancestors, to their gods, and to their high up, like their highest leader.
Elders. Yeah.
So yeah, so yes, food is a big thing. That's why the two sites, Tutu and Trunk Bay, are
Mhm.
both, although not ritual,
Are important.
are
Yeah.
occupation sites. So we learned a lot about what they were eating at those places, and now we'll learn about how that diet overlaps with their ritual. So, and then
I'm gonna repost
oh
Kornika so you
yeah,
can see it. But
yeah,
one quick question from me is:
uh,
are these the soil samples that you said were taken in the '90s, or was this new stuff that
yeah,
you did
oh yeah.
previous?
I did no excavation when I was on St. John,
Okay,
except for some shovel tests
gotcha.
and a phase one underwater survey, which I mentioned earlier.
Hmm.
So these were taken 22 years ago in 2001 under the direction of a paleoethnobotanist named Lee Newsom, who is a lovely woman who was a top Caribbean archaeologist for many, many years. She is now
Hmm.
retired. Um, and she directed Ken on how to take the samples because she was not, I don't believe she was present when they were taken, but
Hmm.
it's intuitive. If you're given the instructions, you can do it. So essentially, what they did was they took the samples of the soil and they took all of these sieves, or like they sieved through,
Is that the
and
stacked ones? The
they
kind of
stacked them.
yeah.
So what that does is you start with a larger mesh. So you
Hmm.
have like mesh that is like 1/4 inch squares, square mesh. Then you have 1/16 square mesh. Then you get even smaller to 1/64 square mesh, and it gets so small you can actually barely even see the little squares. And that allows them to actually
For everyone,
very
it looks like
gently.
this.
Oh,
They look.
thank you.
Yeah, I pulled up
Um,
this. It looks like
oh
little
yeah, thank you.
little stack sifts.
Yeah. You can take a makeup brush. You can either do dry screening
Hmm.
of um, soil samples, or you can do water screening. Which water screening is more common, but in the Caribbean it made more sense because things are going to be more fragile, especially plant
Yeah.
remains. So they used very like good makeup brushes because you
Huh.
can be gentle with them to push them very carefully through those sieves, and that's how they separated the soil samples. So that was done
Hmm.
over 20 years ago. Unfortunately, although Dr. Lee Newsom had intended to do the analysis herself for cinnamon, time got away from her and it never happened. And now, hey, it worked out for me. So,
Hey,
and
and
I'm in contact.
that's so cool. And then
Mhm.
the final question before I get to Acornicas, is there a chance because it's been 22 years that it is compromised or
You're no, because they're
interesting?
carbonized, and they're
That's
in bags and they're in archival bags. This is actually a question that my committee asked me.
hmm.
When you do a master's thesis, you have a committee, a group of professional or PhD individuals who look over your research. And I was asked that, and it was confirmed by my advisor that no, they are fine,
That's good.
because that is a concern for
Yeah,
some types of things. But thankfully, no. Thank God.
that's great.
Um, you would think it would, but because they're carbonized, and also
Yeah,
just to
and I
remind,
guess it was more rather than it's been compromised, like say it's been sitting in a
yeah,
bag somewhere, because like we all hope that all our archaeological storage places are good. Some of
oh
them are
yeah,
not, but like
no,
it's more of like, is it going to hurt it that that you haven't touched it in 20 years? But
no,
I'm guessing in this case, it's just We're
Yeah.
lucky it's just soil and carbonized
Oh yeah,
material.
and
Like,
one thing too is that I always try to remind people this, like when they're like, "But why don't you just go get all the stuff out of the ground, right? If
yeah,
it's been able to sit in the ground for thousands of years, it'll be fine for another however long it takes
that
people to
is
get to
true.
it, 100, So yeah, so
Very
they're
true.
fine. Question. Okay, so was there more to the story of where Columbus landed, or was it just that's where the Taíno were? That's a really good question that I don't really know the answer to.
That's
I
fine.
know for a fact that he landed on Guanahani, which is the indigenous name of San Salvador in the Bahamas. He had dinner with the chief. I do know this. They traded very cheap goods with the indigenous people on Lucyon. I'm sorry,
Mm-hmm.
of Guanahani.
Mm-hmm.
So like beads and stuff that were literally worth pennies
Yeah.
in Europe, they traded for gold and like foodstuffs, things that would sustain them. So
Mm.
they were essentially like cheating these people out of goods because
Of
they were
course they were.
so shitty. And like, yeah, they were literally getting gold and stuff from these people by just giving them beads and like pieces of cloth, like very inexpensive goods. So that's a bit more to the story. I don't know a lot about it. It's not something I've really looked much into because I kind of get really angry when I read about Columbus. So that
For
was in 1492.
92, Columbus
Landed
sailed
there.
the ocean blue. I hate that
There
I
you
know that.
go.
For
Mm.
anybody curious, this is San Salvador, the island, and when I zoom out on this map, then we get the Bahamas. So it's kind of the most
Mm-hmm.
east island when you're coming at kind of this direct angle. It is kind of outside of the kind of typical curve that it looks like the
Mm-hmm.
Bahamas kind of has. So
Yeah. Are you
um,
sharing your screen? I can't even tell.
I'm not sharing my screen. Let me share it with you.
Oh,
Do 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 do
ah,
do.
I want to see.
We're just on Google Maps. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so here is San Salvador.
Yeah.
Um, so
Small
here
island.
it says Guanahani Beach Club
There you go.
that
Guanahani.
they've at least renamed it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, you can
Sure.
see like all the islands on the Bahamas are all kind
Yeah.
of on a line except
Very,
for that
very close
island.
to Florida. So,
Yeah. See, I
yeah.
have only been to
I feel like most people go to Nassau.
I think I've been to Nassau because we came
Yeah.
from Fort Lauderdale.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Was it a cruise?
it was not a cruise, but it was a
Ah,
cruise. It
interesting. Okay.
essentially my cousins in Texas got a like one of those timeshare like at an auction
Um,
or something. So in Fort Lauderdale, we had to go around and do the timeshare lecture where they like tour you around, try to convince you to buy the timeshare, and then they put you on a cruise ship, a small cruise ship, but a cruise ship, and then I think the trip from Fort Lauderdale to Nassau is literally only like I think it's supposed to be like 4 hours or something. Like if you go at a decent speed, it's quite quick. They
yeah.
went as slow as possible so that you don't arrive there until morning. So literally, it was like one like afternoon to morning on the boat. You woke up in Nassau. We went to a timeshare there for like 2 or 3 days. And
Wow.
then you get back on the boat, and then they do a one. It's like it was this short little timeshare thing. We were also there after a hurricane, and like the
Ooh,
island
yeah.
we definitely did some cool stuff there. I had conch fritters,
Mhm.
which quite literally I could
Oh,
eat
I never got to
tons.
have
Oh
critters
my
when I was
god.
on
They make
St.
this
John.
like slight spicy ketchup that you dip it in, and it's like phenomenal. um
They're, yeah, they were not available at the time.
oh
Like, if there was a season for conch, I was not there during it.
yeah. But then we get down here to the Virgin Islands.
Hmm.
So it cracks me up that like there's just a line in between the US and the British
Yeah,
Virgin
I
Islands.
just want
Like,
to make sure that people know.
is it I'm wondering if you cross that line via boat, do you have to go through customs and all that stuff? Like
No, once you hit land on,
land. Yeah.
usually you go to Tortola,
Or
um,
Tortola. That's the big
which here's a fact that people should know. Okay, so you see how it says Annaberg, kind of in
Annaberg,
the
yeah.
northern part of
Yep.
St. John.
So here's a
If
close
you're,
up view. This is where she was working
yeah,
Cinnamon Bay. So Annenberg
yeah.
right here.
So Yeah, so there's Cinnamon Bay, and then there's Annenberg on the right. And if you're standing at Annenberg, that's actually a plantation.
Oh yeah, I
You're
see
very,
it.
very, yep, that's exactly what it looks like. Um, if you're standing at Annenberg, you could see Tortola,
Oh
which is
wow.
the British Virgin Islands. The British Virgin Islands um,
Mm.
ended slavery sooner than the Virgin Islands that we have now, which were the Danish Virgin
Mm-hmm.
Islands.
Yep.
Um, and so, if you were standing at Annenberg, you could see freedom as an
That's
enslaved and for
absolutely
like
insane.
quite a long time. Yeah, very, very sad.
That's very sad.
I
That's
don't think
crazy.
I think the Danish didn't. When did
See, that's the
oh,
thing that I learned about the about St. Croix is that St. Croix was called like it's called like the like eight eight nation or something because eight separate people
yes,
including the
yes,
Knights of Malta,
Malta, yes,
the
the
tiny
French,
little island.
yeah, the French, the Spanish, the Knights of Malta, the U.S. of course, the British. I actually think I know
Spain,
the Danish.
Danish.
Um, there's a couple that I can never
I can't
remember.
remember if I don't know what the number was, but it's a high number. It's like eight or
I think I
nine.
literally have this in a presentation. Hold on, I got you.
But here, this is the
That's,
island of St. Croix. So when
yeah,
I worked here, the two
yeah.
big cities are Christiansted and Frederiksted.
Mhm.
And where's
7 different flags. The Netherlands. That's the one
seven?
I forgot. Yeah.
So yeah,
So
the I do
Spain,
remember the Netherlands. Yeah.
yeah, Great Britain, the Netherlands, France, the Nice, Malta, Denmark, and the United States.
Um,
Um,
that was my favorite part. Is that when I just clicked that thing, you saw you could see the what's it called, the old windmills.
yes.
And it's all over St. Croix
Oh,
are
they're
all the
so
windmills.
beautiful.
And there was this, and so it's like leftover remains of like a windmill
Mhm.
building. Why are these all videos? I just want a
It's missing,
photo.
of course, the actual windmill.
Windmill
It's just,
portion.
yeah.
But I actually have, if it was not in my living room, I would show you. But I have there was an
Video too.
artist on St. Croix who created these. They had plates and magnets of that shape, that little cone shape, and sold
Oh,
it. And so I
yeah.
have a little plate that has that shape, and then I also have a magnet in the shape of these like
Mhm.
things because it's like,
Yeah.
ironically, like when you talk about Europe and there's a castle on every hill in St.
Yeah.
Croix, there's a windmill on every hill because
Every
everything
hill.
used to be a
And
plantation.
oh yeah. And so what you're seeing with those windmills is that's how they crush the sugar cane so
Mm-hmm.
they can get the juices out. And those windmills are very indicative of the structures in the Virgin Islands because what you're seeing is, it looked really blotchy. That's actually
Mm-hmm.
because they tempered their concrete with
Mm.
shells
Oh
so
yeah.
that they didn't have to use as much concrete. And those shells are so strong. And they
They
do
are.
that now today still as a way as an ode to previous architecture. So
Yeah, so here's the estate, Little Princess. So this is where
yes,
I was, which
yeah.
so this is what's left of it is this
Ah,
house.
oh,
And
and
this isn't pretty good condition considering when I was there, and
yeah,
it
so
was just
beautiful.
it was after the hurricane and stuff. But out here, maybe not that. There
Which
are
hurricane? Irma
yeah.
Maria. Yeah,
This was 2018, so the year
Irma,
before
Irma
Irma.
Maria.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so the cool part, I could actually find. Here's some. So these houses right
Oh no.
here, this is the overseer's house, and there
Oh
are
yeah.
two others that are right next to it that are still
Uh-huh.
standing enslaved houses. And so
Yeah.
that's where we were excavating.
Hmm.
I was working with a DC group called Archaeology in the Community, but she works with I'm trying to remember what order they say their name. I think it's a Society of Black Archaeologists.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and so she's part of that group, and they essentially they had a field school. So like Howard was down there, and they had a field school with all the students. And then
Hmm.
I came in the last week when they invited the kids from the YMCA, who were there for the
Oh,
summer,
cool.
to excavate. So I had a huge group of high schoolers who,
Mhm.
most of them didn't care, but they would always, I just kept handing them objects to clean, and they're like, I'm done. I'm like, here you go, take all that, take that pottery. And they're like, no, don't make me. I'm like,
Oh my god.
I'm gonna make you do
That's
it
so funny.
because that's what we're doing. Um, but they do have a university on the island. I think it's
You
here.
do.
No, lies. That's the Kmart.
Yeah,
There it is.
Kmart.
They have a St. Croix University, and there is an
Mhm.
archaeologist there,
Really?
but I don't know. I don't know if she's technically an archaeologist or if she is like a historian. But I met her once. She came to one of the dinners we
Okay.
had. Um,
Yeah.
and now I'm trying to figure out where that fort was.
I think it was Christiansen because that I
Yeah,
see a
I think
St.
it's right here.
Vincent's right there.
Yeah, so it's right
Yeah.
here. So this is so the
Yeah.
Fort Christensen. So here it is. So here's the
Christiansen.
fort. So yeah, so
Oh, so
this
beautiful.
archaeologist, this was his view, and I'm like, are you
Oh
kidding me? What a view
my
from your
God. It's so
so
beautiful.
this
Yeah,
is
I remember.
actually this is like the little park kind of outside of it, and I think this
Mhm.
is where a lot of there was archaeology going on somewhere here, but
Mhm. And
again,
those
I
red
mean,
roofs are all that's very common in the Virgin Islands. Very beautiful, especially when
um
you're looking at it from above.
yeah, and one of the things in Frederickstead, for anybody who's into a little bit more modern history, um,
Hmm.
Alexander Hamilton lived here for a little bit.
Hmm.
And there is a house that when you go on Google, you can go and find, but there's nothing there. But it is on Google when you
Okay.
occasionally look around. It says, "Oh, it's Alexander Hamilton's house," and I'm like, "Oh, cool."
Did
And
he
so I
live
tried.
there before he went to the United
Yeah.
States?
So he was born in the Caribbean.
He was born in the Dominican Republic, if I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
So yeah, I wasn't. I think you're right, but I think at one point he. I'm going to
Hmm.
assume it was after his mother died, but before he went to the
Yeah,
United
because he was
States.
working for somebody, right?
He was working for his. Well, we're going purely off of Hamilton right now. Part of the song, he worked for his cousin.
Yeah. Hmm.
So, but I remember finding it on a map somewhere, and it was like, oh, this is so cool. I want to go see it. And then I like walked around a corner, and like it wasn't there.
He was not born in the Dominican Republic. He
I
was
just
born
know
on St. Kitts and Nevis.
Nevis. Yeah, I
Nevis.
wasn't. I knew it was somewhere here. I didn't know where.
Well, you want to know why? You want to know why I think it's the Dominican Republic?
Because of In the Heights.
Yep. Which is one of my favorite musicals, and I've been a fan of it since I was like 13. So when a movie was being made, I got 7 texts from different
Amazing,
people
amazing.
sending me the trailer because everyone knows how
Everyone
much I
was
love it.
ready. Everyone
I
was so
liked Lin
ready.
Manuel before it was cool.
I'm not even joking you. Today on TikTok, I just saw a video of him, which I've never seen before in my life,
Okay.
of him when he found out that In the Heights was going on Broadway, and it's
Oh,
him. It's girl, I have to send this to you because this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. It's him doing. It's also again. Remember whatever I don't know what time period that was when it went on Broadway,
yeah,
but just think of phone quality at that time.
2006.
It's really bad. It's really bad video phone quality
Oh my
of
god.
him running through Central Park and singing a version of Bet on It from High School Musical 2 that he changed the lyrics to about him going on Broadway,
Oh
and it was quite
my
literally so
god.
embarrassing that I could not finish watching it.
This secondhand embarrassment was too much for Melissa, obviously.
Everyone in the comments was like, this is awful." I will find it for you and send it to you
Oh
because it is the
my
funniest thing I've ever
god.
seen in my life.
Everyone
It's also
always
like
says that he's terrible at singing, and I actually think he's a fantastic singer. I
I
mean,
think in comparison to a lot of other singers, he's not a.
yes,
I wouldn't not put him in the singer
no,
category just because I think he is better as like a rapper as a fast.
oh
I don't
yeah,
think he is a classically singer, but
yeah.
like I'm not gonna say he's bad.
I don't
So
think he's bad.
I don't think he's
Um,
bad, but yeah,
yeah. Someone said to me that they didn't like him because he was weird, and I was like, "Have you met him? Also, have
he's
you met a
very
theater kid before?
yeah
Have you
he's
met a theater kid? He is one
he
in a million.
is
They're all fucking weird."
the absolute theater kid. Um, Absolutely, no other option for that.
So stupid. Oh my gosh.
Um,
Does anyone have any more questions? I want to know if anyone has any
yeah,
questions. Oh my god.
I'm trying to think.
I'm sorry, I'm not yawning because I'm bored. I have been up
No,
since like 6 a.m. And
I
it's
also have been up since 6 a.m. and I was up till like midnight last night, and I have to get up at least 6 a.m. tomorrow to go pick up my family puppy. So it's worth
Oh,
it.
it's so exciting. What kind of puppy?
A golden doodle.
A golden
There will be very many photos tomorrow. We actually have to pick it tomorrow. We actually don't know which puppy we're
so
getting.
excited. Are you gonna go for a boy or a girl, or does it matter?
My parents want a boy. They don't want to deal with girl problems, and I'm like,
Uh,
I don't care. But we've always had a boy dog, so I guess that's how
That's
it's
fair.
gonna be. But we did finally pick a name, which we were talking about on stream a couple days ago.
Oh,
It is going to be Oliver slash Ollie. So
love that.
it's gonna be very cute.
That's
But
amazing.
it literally, I was telling everyone on Tuesday, I'm like, we're getting this dog on Saturday, and we do not have a name for this dog. And then my
Yeah,
friend
I was in
Kayla,
that for a
yeah,
little minute. I was like, what? A
and then my
dog?
friend Kayla, who's like, I have bought this dog a present, and it doesn't even have a name yet. And I'm like, I know, like I
Oh
know
my
you,
God. So
I know
funny.
you're going to buy a gift for it before it even has a name.
I love that.
Um, but I had another question, and
Oh, you're good.
trying to remember what it was. Um,
Oh my God. I'm
but
just seeing things popping up that I know on like St. Thomas and St. John. Like that's hilarious. Like, those
I
are the
know,
two.
and I miss out. I miss St. Croix. I would really love to go back, and I would love to also go to Puerto Rico more because
Yeah.
when we had connecting flights in Puerto Rico, and all we did was my boss very confidently was like, "We can leave the airport. We have a 2 hour layover.
Yeah.
We can leave it." And I'm like, "Okay." Me, anxiety wise, never would have done it, but very glad
Yeah.
that she had the confidence. So we went into Old San Juan and got very
Mhm.
good paella and mofongo,
Ooh.
which
You have Johnny
I'm
Did you have Johnny cakes when you were on St. Croix?
no wait. I might have. That sounds
Yeah.
familiar.
Kind of plain, like little cake. No, not like icing. Almost like a pita bread. Like I don't know how else to describe
I
it. Maybe
think I
with a
might.
little sweetness. It was good. Good stuff.
Did you have any soursop? Because I'm obsessed with soursop.
Bitch.
And the worst part, I was there for 2 weeks. I did not have soursop until the second to last day we were there. There was a really great little breakfast spot, pancake shop,
How would you
and
describe the flavor of soursop? It's
un-
so hard to
it's
describe.
so freaking sweet, but it's so
Like a
good.
starburst.
It's
I
like
don't.
yeah, it is like
So
drinking
sad.
candy. It is so. I actually found on Amazon you can buy like soursop juice boxes, and I was considering it at a because like I don't know where else you find it. Like there might be a Caribbean type
Okay.
like grocery store that
You
you
know
might be able
what's
to find
really
it.
tragic is I was on St. John in 2022.
Hmm.
In 2017, we had two major Cat 5s hit St. John,
Oh
Irma and
God.
Maria, and it
Yep, I
was
remember. This
devastating.
was bad.
And that also just killed a bunch of the native tree population,
I
including
I
the fruit trees.
I bet.
Soursop is very hard to find now in St. John. So I only got it about 3 or 4 times, but
I'm not even joking. I think I got it
it
once.
has a death grip on me.
I
So,
think I
but
literally
I
had
was,
it once.
yeah.
But the funny thing was this restaurant, this restaurant that we went to, like one of the times we went there multiple times for breakfast, and
Yeah.
one of the things was like my boss told me you should get soursop. I was like, I'll get soursop, cool. So I got it and I really liked it. And then when we went back there the day before the day we were flying out, the day before we had gone on this
Hmm.
snorkeling. Oh, and that's what it's called. It's called Buck Island
No,
Beach.
Buck Island. Yes, I know what
Um,
that is.
so Buck Island, we went and did our snorkeling tour. They dropped you off a little bit on the sandbanks. We brought food. We did it, and then on the way on the boat ride back to Christian said they gave us all rum punch. They just like passed out rum punch, like homemade rum punch in a freaking milk jug.
Yeah.
And
Hell yes.
my boss
So
is
crazy.
like, my boss is like she's 40 plus years, but she doesn't look it at all. She goes to carnival in like lots of different places, wears the cute little bikini carnival outfits. I mean, knows how to absolutely party. So she convinces this guy to give us the rest, to give us a second helping of the rum punch, and he just gives her the rest of the milk jug. So we take the
Yeah.
milk jug home, and then we didn't want to waste it. So not even joking you, the next morning as we were about to get on my flight, we pour the rum punch into our water bottles, and we go to this breakfast spot, and I'm drinking orange juice out of one cup and secret rum
Yeah.
punch out of my water bottle. But I wanted soursop, and they didn't have any when I was there, and I was like, dang it, I wanted soursop before I wanted to go. But now I've remembered the question I want to ask you, but now I need to look
Oh,
up
yes.
something Okay, so there is a practice that I discovered in
Mm-hmm.
St. Croix that
Mm-hmm.
is that my archaeologist professor like kind of told us about and stuff. And hi, Mark. Anna will answer your question just after I ask mine. And I have to like look this up, but you might remember the name of it. Have you heard of this practice that modern people, modern peoples in the Caribbean do, where they go and find pieces of ceramic and they make it into jewelry, and or it originally used to be that kids would like make little coins and little like tokens and stuff, but now it's being made into jewelry. Do you remember what this is called? Because
I don't know the name of it,
I'm
but
gonna
it pisses me off to no end. There are people who do this on St. John. I have gone into jewelry stores. I've seen that kind of jewelry where they use even
I'm trying to look up the
indigenous, which
name
is
for it.
so wrong. But yes, I have seen it and it's frustrating because it's just not cool. But
Is it called Cheney? Cheney jewelry? I'm trying to figure out. There is a name.
mhm.
Cheney pottery. I don't know. The thing is there's one big store. St. Croix is known actually for a lot of oh, here we go. Museum exhibit. This is perfect. In Christiansted at the National Historic Site of the Virgin Islands,
Uh-huh.
museum exhibits Cheney stories from migrant fragments. So Chaney.
Yeah, I think I have heard of this. I completely forgot about it, but yes, people do this all the time in the Caribbean because it's everywhere, and I
Yeah.
get it, I do, but
Mm-hmm.
it's frustrating because it's not for you. It's not for anybody.
Yeah.
Like it's for everybody. Like it should be like
Yeah.
it.
And it's
Also, it
something.
should just go back to the earth. Like I don't know.
Yeah, and it's something that so this is what the National Park Service says. Cheney is regularly collected by Crucians and tourists visiting the island when they appear on the ground surface or shorelines of the U.S. Virgin Islands. But when is it okay to collect Cheney found around the island?
Mm-hmm.
And it's saying, according to these laws, cultural resources both above and underground belong to the respective property owners. Which, yeah,
Yeah.
that's you're not allowed to take anything. But I'm gonna share this with y'all so you can
Mm-hmm.
see. Let me
In the
share it with you
National
too.
Park Service on St. John, it is highly illegal. There is a motto, and I fully believe in this motto. It's
So
take
this,
only photos. So don't take
mhm,
anything, but take photos and
yeah.
leave only the prints.
So essentially, what this practice was, from what I was able to gather, is that obviously during this kind of time period of like colonial archaeology, and I talk about this at my museum all the time, where it's like they didn't have trash men, they did not have landfills, they did not have garbage cans. So anything that was
No,
broken beyond repair, you just chucked it out, you chucked it down a
no.
privy, you chucked it down a well, or you literally chucked it out the window, and you didn't care about it. And so you frequently find pottery pieces that have been broken like this, and then
Mm-hmm.
when you're in a place like St. Croix where you can find them in the ocean, they've also been worn on the edges, so they're not sharp
Yes.
anymore. Like, and so
Mm-hmm.
essentially, there are companies that do this where they will. St. Croix it originally, from what I have gathered, is it used to be a practice kind of obviously after freedom in the islands, as a
Yeah.
way that like these sites were at the time period when sites like this were not protected.
Yeah.
Children frequently would go and either find them or dig them up, and they would kind of whittle them to make like little like game pieces and little like coins,
Yeah.
and it did. The weird part about this is it is oddly kind of part of the now modern culture, and so then it gets into this very fishy area where you're like, don't do it, but I understand, but I don't
Yeah.
do it. And so there was, so St. Croix is known for, they have a lot of like gold jewelry shops, and so there is
Mm-hmm.
one that like my
Oh
boss
yeah.
took me into, and she gave me the down low of all of this before we went in, because
Yeah.
she's like, you're gonna see pieces that are gonna look really weird to you, and I'm like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you go in and you see like these beautiful jewelry pieces, pendants and stuff, and you're
Yeah.
like, oh wait, I kind of like it, but I
I mean, it's
can't.
beautiful. I
It
can't lie.
is, um, but it is like, so it is apparently called like Cheney and stuff, and
Mm-hmm.
broken pieces of ceramics, and you use it in jewelry. And so it's something I was
Yeah.
just curious if you had seen as well, and if this is a maybe this is a possibly Caribbean wide practice,
Yeah.
and because I haven't heard of it in mainland America, even though
Oh,
I am sure
it
I'm sure that
happens.
something happened like this, but I've never seen it been set in jewelry like this
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, for sure. No, I definitely not in the in mainland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Interesting. It is
but
really
yeah, I was thinking
interesting.
about that.
Hmm.
So yeah, Mark, what was your
So,
question?
Mark, are there any pushbacks on the local communities having a non-Caribbean archaeologist exploring their history? How do you overcome obstacles of local populations not supportive of excavations or archaeological investigations? This is a
That was
great,
another one.
good
That was
question.
another one of my questions. I forgot about this one. Yeah.
So, let's talk about the Taíno for a moment. So, in modern day, unfortunately, as I mentioned previously, which I know you said you were lurking, so I don't know if you heard this, but due to the forced assimilation that occurred in the Caribbean, which was very early on, um, many people don't actually identify as Taino. They don't even recognize themselves as having that indigenous heritage. So we have many people who do identify as Taino, but not nearly as many who are like I guess actively
Mm-hmm.
um, objecting. I think right now because they're not federally recognized, which is unfortunate.
That's
And if you
unfortunate.
don't know what that means, I know Mark does, but when you're not federally recognized by the United States as a cultural, like as a tribe
Mm-hmm.
or a nation, you really don't have any rights. The most you can do is yell louder than everyone else and hope that people will listen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But even federally recognized groups like the Anishinaabe or I think the Potawatomi and
Oh
the
yeah.
Napanee, these groups who've had pipelines going straight through the reservation have
It's not really
no,
working. It's
it
just
doesn't
like
work. And they're federally recognized as
because I was
nation.
gonna
They
say
are
there's a large number. I feel like of I might Google that, but like there is a larger number than you would expect of federally
Mhm.
recognized groups,
Yes.
but then they keep. I'm gonna look that up. Let me see how many.
Yeah. So the issue is that they, again, like I said, there's this great separation. In Puerto Rico, there are a lot of people who identify with their Taino heritage. Um, if somebody objected,
574.
yeah, there's a
Like
lot.
that's an insane number. I hate to say it for America, who has not
Mhm.
always had the best history with government protection of indigenous people. Like that is an insane number for today to have at the moment readily
Yeah.
recognized. But then I'm absolutely sure that there are many, many more, obviously, that are not.
So, Mark, if I were to have somebody object, or if I had somebody upset, then I would, of course, stop and I would seek consultation. I would seek ways that we can include Indigenous people. I would do everything I could in order to, I guess, back off, like reasonably, like if I've already done the analysis, like and those soil samples, in case you were wondering about this ethical issue, those soil samples will have no destructive analysis completed on them, and they will be sent back to St. John to be put back where they have been kept for the last 20 years. So they will remain on the island and in perpetuity. So I believe very strongly in Indigenous people having no, we do not.
Interesting.
No, yeah, we don't. Um,
I need to look up
I
more about NAGPRA.
am so against biological archaeology in the Caribbean. Personally, it can't always be avoided, but it is so gray.
Mm.
Um, Really, it's black. Like I hate it, and yeah, because there are so many different people who are buried in those Caribbean islands. I came across cholera graves when I was
Mm.
on St. John. Those were enslaved people. The only thing Oh, nice.
I feel like we've talked about this before, Mark. I gotta ask you about this again.
Thing that they had to identify themselves was a single hoe, like
Mm.
a like
Yeah.
that's all they had was the tool that they worked their entire life with to
Yeah.
mark their grave. Um, and so it's it's really hard because I want to do everything right. And unfortunately, I don't know where the contact information is for that group on Puerto Rico because I
Mm.
did find it once. I think their website got taken down.
Bummer.
Otherwise, I would be in contact with them, asking them like about maybe their traditional plant
Hmm.
uses like today. But it's hard. Again, like I said, just the forced assimilation and the gap in our understanding of cultural practices of the Taíno. So,
Yeah. Because that
yeah.
was one thing that I mentioned before. I over on my other TikTok, Unearth Archaeology, I'm doing more general archaeology news because obviously I'm MelissainDeNile. I only do Egypt news, and so one of the things that came up like last month was that they found human remains of the oldest people of that they have found, I guess, so far, the earliest graves in Puerto Rico. And I
Yeah.
remember thinking that, like, I mean, the article was very short. They didn't show any bodies. Like, literally, the page is just a picture of Puerto Rico. Um,
Yeah.
but I remember thinking, because this happens all the time, every time
Yeah.
I post any Egypt news about graves being found, I always get the put them back, desecrating graves, doing all this other stuff, which I
Mhm.
understand.
Yeah.
But I was worried so far that, like, I was wondering if I would get people because I put like hashtag Puerto Rico. I put even
Mhm.
like the place that it was found in, like in the hashtags and stuff. And I was curious if I would get Puerto Ricans kind of coming forward and saying
Mhm.
like don't do this and stuff. And I've
Yeah.
only posted it literally today, but I did get one comment from somebody who seems to be Puerto Rican saying, I'm so glad this is gonna like rewrite our history. And I was like, oh my god,
Oh
thank you.
yeah, that's
I was like, oh
amazing.
god, like because it's an unfortunate thing
I
that's like
I didn't even know this happened. How new is this?
um was last month, I think. I'm kind of behind because when it's not
Oh,
Egypt, I'm looking at archaeology from everywhere. But
how did I miss
let
this?
me look up Puerto
Disappointing.
Rico. It's on some archaeology.
News.com. That's always where I go.
I think it was archaeologynews.com, but I think it
Yeah.
was last month. So here's science.com. Let me share this. I'll put the link in the doo-doo-doo. So it's the oldest human remains from Puerto Rico. Contradict the island of simple nomads, and like this was a simple. I think this was coming from a bigger article because that's what archaeology news tech
Yeah.
tends to do, where they read the full article and then they give it to you
Mhm.
in really simple terms, which is really good.
Did they give any
But
kind of cultural affiliation?
um, no, not that I remember. But they say that some date about 3,800 years ago, so that would have been I think it said 1800 to
Interesting.
800. 2500. 2500 was the oldest,
I didn't
I
realize
think.
that that was wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and it was kind of odd. This wasn't the exact article. Where was it? It was on this website. This phys.org. It always has the bottom at the bottom it has the link to the
Yeah.
actual journal. So the actual journal article is called oh god. Um
Oldest human remains Puerto Rico contradict ideal a simple island
so
nomad.
so this is the actual journal article. Let me put that link
Yeah.
in. So this is reconsidering the lives of the earliest Puerto Ricans, mortuary archaeology and bioarchaeology of the Ortiz site. So it's the Ortiz site is what the place
Oh,
is
okay.
called. And so it's like we possess very little detailed information of the lives of the first inhabitants of Puerto Rico, the so-called archaic or pre-Arawak people.
Mhm.
Um,
Pretty.
and this site is called Cabo Rojo, and it said essentially, from what I remember, that it had originally like Puerto Rico. We've only had like they've only had like maybe 20 remains from any time period that's like close to this. So like anything early, they've only had about 20 remains at all ever found. And in this site they found five more that range from what years was it?
Say 3,800. Was that what you said?
I think it
Or sorry,
said it's 3,800 years ago. So it was like, I think they
yeah,
said like 2,500 to like 800 or something. Okay,
that makes more sense to
this
me.
article, this is the shortened version. So this is William J. Pestel of the University of Miami, Florida. And so they've only had 20 ancient individuals from this time period, but they found five adult individuals at Cabo Rojo, and they as old as 1800 BC and as young as 800 BC. And so they kind of
Yeah.
talked about how this one burial site was inhabited but had been
Mm-hmm.
used for that whole time period, about 1,000 years. And
Wow.
they said that the mortuary practices, including positioning of the bodies and associated grave goods, was consistent over that 1,000 years. And so that was like a pretty cool thing. I think that was the biggest thing that I took away from it, is that like it looked like it was kind of the same community, or at least the same practices are like kind of continuing on, and stuff. But yeah, there's probably way more in the, and I'm sure Mark will love that article because I think it
Oh yeah.
goes very deep into, but this is the site. So Puerto Rico in the bottom, the what is it? The southwest corner, and Ortiz is here. So this is where this Cabo Rojo site is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just really interesting. And but again, I was like, I unfortunately have that kind of knee jerk reaction sometimes when I post videos like that when it comes to Egypt, because how do I continue to explain that looting is still a thing?
Mm-hmm.
Um, these bodies are found in places that are not secure, and they will eventually fade away, and they are so unstable,
Yeah.
and that it's hard to convince people that a museum is safer, um,
Yeah. And
for
that
these
in
remains.
Egypt, it's Egyptians who are like the
Yeah, and that's
descendants.
the other thing is that it's hard to also explain to people that like, yes, the Egyptian people are the ones who are typically looting. Like nowadays, like I hate to say it, it's like, yes, for a very very long time, European and Americans went and took their pick of the litter. But looting, the original looting, the things that happened immediately after burial, that was all done by the ancient Egyptians.
Oh
like
yeah.
people don't understand that like the pyramids were probably looted within a couple months to a year of it being buried, and it was completely emptied by the people that built the pyramids because they knew
Yeah.
how to get in and they knew what was
So
in it. And so they would take the stuff out. They would like, we're not missing all of that stuff because of colonizers. We're missing some of the
yeah.
stuff, but not all of it.
Oh
And
yeah.
then nowadays we still get looting. I mean, I had the stupid article where some guys were
Yeah.
trying to take a 200-ton statue out of a place in Aswan.
Dear
And like
God.
the confidence is crazy to me.
I know.
Um and kind of very similar to like what you were saying, is that a lot of the local people don't actually identify with the Taíno culture. It is still very prominent that there are a good chunk of Egyptians that do not identify with the ancient Egyptians at all.
Wow.
Like it's not a universal thing, and there are definitely, I would say, people that probably originally didn't, that like, let's say like their grandparents definitely did not, but nowadays as they observe and as they learn more, that they
Hmm.
are kind of adopting it, but
Oh
not
yeah.
in the sense of in this not in the sense of ethnicity, in the sense of nationalism, almost,
Yeah.
in that weird way where it's not
Mhm.
that there are definitely Egyptians who are like, I descended from the Egyptians and like, and the ancients, and like there are definitely people like that. But I think the increase in interest in Egyptology is not because of this kind of, I descended this direct bloodline. It's more of
Mhm.
this like national pride, which is what they're trying to
Mhm.
do, and that is totally, I mean, absolutely what needs to be done. But then there are very very much people that still live, that have the beliefs that So I mean, some of them even more extremist that are like kind of when you look at the Near East and that
Yeah.
the images of gods that aren't theirs that shouldn't exist. Like there are still some people in
Mm-hmm.
exactly, yeah, Mark, that people that Islamic there are some Islamic groups that don't respect ancient Egyptian religion and the images of
Yeah.
those gods and stuff. And so it
Interesting.
it is something that like the looting is not done by
Mm-mm.
is the purchasing of those looted items done by white people? Yes, most likely.
Oh.
Although I will say one of the biggest looting things that just came out is actually from Abu Dhabi. Technically, it's the Louvre in Abu Dhabi, but it is kind of a half and half issue that like there was a I did a video about it a long time ago. One of the first newses was that I think a UAE ambassador was like indicted for trying to smuggle something out
Oh my God.
to there. And so like people I don't think understand that as much. And so it's like and also my favorite part is the put it back. When you just say put it back, I'm like you understand that that tomb is wide open now. We
Oh yeah.
definitely cannot put that back. Like
No.
like archaeology is the art of destruction, the science of destruction. Like that tomb
Yes.
is full blown open,
Oh yeah.
and we're gonna have to put a gate over it. We're gonna have to keep it up now, but like it is not secure, even more so now.
Oh no.
So
Absolutely.
just the plain old put it back just never works.
So funny. Oh my God.
Um,
No man. Well.
but yeah, it's
Okay.
I definitely understand that it's
Yeah.
not as big of a problem and in an unfortunate community that has not
Yeah.
that has been seriously separated from the
Yeah.
indigenous roots.
Yeah.
But it was nice to see that they had an archaeology museum when I looked over the map.
It's true.
That's definitely
But Mhm.
I don't think St. Croix has an archaeology museum.
Probably not.
They probably have some
Well.
at the university, but I don't think they do.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it is 8:45 my time, which I
I know.
know is
It
ridiculous.
is
I have
9:45
to
my
get up.
time.
I have to get up at 5:30 tomorrow because I have to get all of my stuff out of this hotel room because we're
Oh,
switching hotels slash I kind of actually going to an Airbnb instead. Paid for by the company, so that's fine.
well, there we go. I know
And
Mark's in England right now, so it's like
oh,
whatever
silly.
time AM. Go to bed.
Yeah. Well, are you on TikTok, Mark? See?
I think he is, but he doesn't post anything. And
Yeah.
my grandparents is also in England. I'm like,
Oh
y'all
yeah.
need to go to bed.
Whatever. Well,
Y'all are
thank you so
dedicated.
much for having
I thank you
me.
so much. I mean, I cannot wait to
Yeah.
have you back when you finish
No,
your
a year,
thesis.
maybe a year. Yeah. So, if you want to find me, I am at the same username you're seeing here at underscore the or and wait, sorry, Anna at wait.
I'm gonna,
I'm really tired. Can you tell?
yeah,
Anna underscore the underscore
I'm gonna find the link.
archaeologist is my
Excuse
username.
me? Can you hold
Um,
my phone so I can make a quick TikTok?
I'm sorry, guys. That was my fault.
I recently posted a couple pretty funny videos, just like
I'm sorry.
doing
I love
like
you
stuff
guys.
because I'm in the field right now. And I also have like an Instagram. I don't really post a lot about my archaeology stuff there. TikTok tends to be the only spot. But I also like I'm a crafter and I actually have like a little like jewelry business. So if anyone wants to check
Yes.
out, it's Daisy Designs by Anna or something like that. I named
There
it
we,
when I was 16 and I never changed.
that's
And
okay.
it's cute. Ah, yes, Alexander has a couple pairs of my earrings. But yeah, so if you want to check that out, feel free. I'm a poor person because I am a student still, and but
Just
yeah,
trying to,
I am thankful to have been here. I love the questions that people asked,
yeah.
and I hope that I'll be here again soon. And please come check me out on TikTok.
Yes. Just
But
posted all the links.
it's time for me to sleep.
Yes, it is time for me to sleep too. I have to wake up so early to go get this puppy tomorrow. So we're gonna say goodbye to Anna, and then I'm going to say some stuff, and then we'll go find somebody to raid. So everyone, say thank you to Anna. This was so great.